from the Office of Career Education. My name is Denny Doherty, and I am joined today with Ashley Vanderpool, who also works in our office. And today we're going to be talking about the exciting topic of online virtual interviews. I mean, who's not excited about that? Ashley, you look like you're excited. So you're pumped. Can hardly contain yourself, right? That's what I thought. So anyway, this is, like I said, this is a live event. We do have a Q&A going throughout this. So Ashley and I have content to share, but what I would encourage anyone to do is to just use that chat feature to ask questions anytime. What we're going to do is, whichever one of us is not presenting, we're going to try to keep an eye on the chat. And of course, anytime you have questions, we want this to be kind of a give and take, not just another presentation that you have to sit through, because I know these days with Teams and Zoom and all that fun stuff, we probably just feel like we do nothing but sit at a screen and watch stuff. So I don't want this to feel like that. I really want to have some give and take. So please, anytime you have questions, feel free to do that. Probably keeping, unless you're me or Ashley presenting, probably keeping a microphone muted. Probably a good idea, just that way we can keep an eye on background noise. Ashley, do you have anything before we get started?
No, I think we're good to go.
All righty, so I'm gonna go ahead and see here if I can get it to make sure I'm moving to the next slide properly. Okay, I think you can, if you want to go ahead and take it away, Ashley, that'd be great.
Okay, so what we'll be discussing today is what is a virtual interview.
Oh, whoops! Did I hit the wrong thing?
There we go.
Sorry, that was totally.
You're fine. What is a virtual interview? Tips and best practices in virtual interviews, and additional resources for Marshall students. So as Denny said, this will be a completely interactive presentation and session. So anytime you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat box. And just to make sure everyone knows how to utilize the chat box, if you wouldn't mind just to open it up and input your name and what your favorite color is.
Oh, good idea, Ashley. I like that. So, do you want me to go ahead and jump to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So, virtual interview. So what is a virtual interview? As we have here on the screen, a virtual interview or video interview, it's a job offer that leverages video technology to allow the discussion to take place remotely. Rather than meeting face-to-face, the hiring manager and the candidate will connect with each other online using video software. Now, that being said, there's a few different ways employers may do this. A couple platforms include Outmatch, MyInterview, Harbor, Google Hangouts, Skype, and Zoom. With Zoom and Skype currently being the most common. Now, virtual interviews are really, I want to mention too, I don't think they're necessarily anything brand new. I've only done one or two of these in my life, and it was before I got to Marshall. So this was probably back in like 2014 or 2015. And oftentimes companies might use them, at least at that point in time, I think they might use them in place of, maybe like a telephone interview or something like that, when they can actually get to see a person and read the nonverbals and things like that. For obvious reasons, they've really accelerated in popularity starting about March of this year, and I'm sure I don't have to explain why. So moving right along. Let's see, in an effort to kind of go along with what I was talking about, in efforts to limit the spread of COVID-19, many companies have adapted to remote work by leveraging video systems like Zoom. And of course, Teams is a big one we use here at the university to connect virtually with their employees. Even though there are there are differences between interviewing in person versus interviewing virtually. And what you'll see is a lot of the same things will apply, meaning it is a job interview and it's something to take seriously. But where it might differ is that with it being virtual, there are some special, unique considerations that you will want to keep in mind as well. So like we said before, anytime you have a question, please feel free to ask in the chat box. So let's see, moving on to tip number one. Tip number one is to position yourself in a well-lit, quiet, clean space. It's essential to choose a quiet, well-lit, neutral, and clean space to conduct your interview, especially if you're taking the virtual interview. If you're doing it at home, you want to make sure to limit distractions. And it's funny because some things that we've seen, we've done some interviews for some GA candidates here recently, and we've seen some things. I know we've seen people playing with their animals and things like that. And this isn't just one. There were a couple of different candidates that actually not just acknowledged, actually like picked up cats and like were holding them and stuff like that. And I'm an animal lover, but I thought, that's a bit much. Maybe don't do that. So if you're doing an interview from home, you want to be as professional as possible. And if you're at home on a device versus being in someone's office where you hope to work, you're definitely more relaxed at home when you're kind of in your zone, so to say, when you're on your turf. But you don't want to get carried away with that. You want to remember it still is a professional type situations. You want to make sure that everything the person who's interviewing you sees, including your person, which we'll get to in a little bit, as well as your background. You also just want to make sure that there's nothing either distracting, unprofessional, or anything like that in your background. I know just a couple people, just a couple students I've spoken to have had things. I mean, they've been, I don't know if they were in a basement, had a lot of junk behind them or something. I have had meetings with people who had like a lot of neon lights behind them, and not that it's really bad per se. If they were doing an interview, I would suggest that maybe they have something. If all else fails, I would just try to have a blank wall behind you, because that might not be the most exciting thing ever, but I don't think it's going to really offend anyone either. So I don't think you can hurt with that. So that's one of the stories, like I said, I noticed was kind of along those lines. They had like the animals. Ashley, do you have any? Can you think of any interesting stories from interviews?
Yes, so I interviewed at my previous job. I assisted with some virtual interviews. One individual was a few states away, so we had to complete the interview on Zoom. And the entire time in the background of her room, there was a balloon, a birthday balloon tied to her bed. I guess the day before it was her birthday, and someone got her a balloon. The fan was going, so the entire time all I saw was that balloon swaying back and forth. I could not pay attention to anything she said during that interview. All I was watching was that balloon as it kind of went back and forth in the room. So background, just be mindful of what's in your background, because it can be distracting. We don't want to take away from the good information that you're providing for the employers. We want to make sure you put your best foot forward in those virtual interviews.
Absolutely, and I think you touched on something very good there too, because of all the things you could pay attention to and try to look out for. A balloon seems pretty innocent. I don't know if you feel that way. I feel a balloon's pretty innocent, but yeah, combined with the ceiling fan, that could be just a total, I don't know, disaster of a background for an interview. So,
and just mindful of making sure everyone in your house knows that you're conducting an interview. I've had situations where children are running back and forth in the background or asking questions. So everyone in your house should know that you're conducting an interview during that time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's not that we did Zoom interviews or anything like that when I was growing up, but my mom had a home business and worked out of our home. Most of the time I was growing up till I was about middle school or so. And that was when she went downstairs where her workspace was and shut the door, she had customers come in, and kind of the rule was if you open that door, there better be a broken bone or a fire. So I think having something similar, and she was serious. She's like, don't go in there and ask me to fix you something to eat. Don't go in there and ask me a question that can wait an hour. So a rule, something like that's probably a really good idea if you have children in the house or anything like that, or a spouse maybe. So.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Ashley for tip number 2.
Okay, so tip number 2 is test your technology beforehand. This is probably one of my favorite tips, and I feel like it's one of the most important. Regardless of what's going on in the background of your interview, you can't conduct the interview at all if you're not able to get on online. So it's important that you check and test your technology several times before the interview and the day to ensure success. Mm-hmm. Be sure to double check your Wi-Fi connection, camera and audio, and video conferencing platforms to confirm they are all working seamlessly. So I had a situation over the summer. We utilized Microsoft Teams a lot in our office. And one morning I had a meeting around 10 o'clock. And I jumped online 10 minutes before my computer was restarting. Some updates. So I was the entire time in panic mode, hoping that it would finish, because it's a little slower when it's doing the updates, hoping that it would be finished before the meeting took place. So this could happen the morning of your interview. So it's important to go ahead and get online. Make sure there's no updates or anything that's going to pop up, anything that you weren't expecting before the interview. Along with that, think about your internet connection at your house. We live in an area where not everyone has the best internet connection. So make sure that you do have good internet connection at your house. If not, there's plenty of places on campus that we can set you up in a clear, quiet space in a room, as long as we know a few days beforehand, and we'll get you set up with that. Along with that, check the weather. That's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. If the day of your interview it's going to be storming, think about that. Could your internet flicker on and off? Could you go to a different location with a stronger internet connection, just to ensure that doesn't happen? So there's a lot of variables that could happen just from internet connection. So keep all of those things in mind beforehand.
Oh, absolutely. I have actually two really good examples to share about that, because everything you said is spot on. Something I've noticed, because I live in town here, typically my internet's pretty good. And earlier, and I think one time back when we were all at home, you saw me disappear from one or two staff meetings. My brother, who rents my basement from me, told me that basically, this is an oversimplification, that we were breaking the internet because we were using it so much back in March and April, and I used to have to reset my router a lot. There were times that sometimes in a staff meeting I'd have to reset my router at home 2 and 3 times, and it was when you unplug my router and plug it back in, it's close to 10 minutes until the internet's usable again. And someone else has suggested to me, if you have an event that you're really concerned about, you can go ahead and preemptively reset it beforehand. So hopefully and I'm not an IT professional, I can't explain the logic behind all this, but theoretically the connection might be a little more stable if you do that. So if you know you're prone to internet flickering, you can do something like that as well. And I had a second story, and it's actually escaping me at the moment. I forget what, because it went along with something really well, but that was an important one I know I really wanted to share, is that even if things are working, they can turn off very quickly. And you mentioned about the computers too. Like even when I came on this morning, I typically leave my computer on. It was inexplicably turned off this morning, so I don't know if it did an update or what. And when I got to my office today, I was even thinking I'm happy I don't have like a student appointment or a virtual appointment here in 5 or 10 minutes, because my office computer, sometimes it can be an hour till it's ready to use in extreme cases. So definitely, you can never account for every single variable, but anything you can do to make sure technology is not going to throw a curveball at you, you really want to take the initiative to make sure of that.
Absolutely. I think we have a hand raised.
Okay. Let's see. Do you want to check on that, or shall I? I will.
I think we'll just have to unmute themselves.
Okay, yeah, I believe it looked like Rowan had asked a question. Is that right? Oh, we got it. Okay, yeah, Rowan, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, please feel free to do that. Or you can enter the chat. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
Hey, Rowan, do you have a question, bud? You guys might just want to go ahead. I'll text him.
Okay, yeah. If you find out what the question is, we'd be happy to answer it. So
sure.
Yeah, sorry about sometimes that's actually it's kind of interesting that happened, because I'm kind of off script here a little bit, but that's something we see with technology too. And I think you even see like some of those, I don't know if it's Geico or I think the commercial with Flo, who are Progressive, they even did a commercial making fun of it. But you get a virtual meeting and everyone goes to talk at once and they stop. Everyone tries to talk again at once, and so little things like that. If you're used to in person and how instantaneously in person you can see as someone's talking, sometimes there is a little bit of a delay, and that's I guess kind of a side conversation. But yeah, like I said, let us know. We'd be happy to answer the questions. So we'll go ahead and move on to tip number 3, and I'm going to cover that one. Tip number 3 is prepare thoroughly, and what you'll find is that just like any other in-person interview, you should be ready to speak in depth about why you want to join the organization, how the company mission resonates with you, and the value that you will bring to a specific role. So why, something I tell students is why that job at that organization. Telling someone why you want a job is not enough. If I'm hiring, I'm going to be thinking about things like, why do you want this job at my company versus that job across town. Sell me on why you want to be here. So you want to be thinking about things like that. Well, what specifically about the company stands out? I know when I applied to work at Marshall, I had gone to grad school here at Marshall, and I talked a little bit about that in my cover letter, that not only does the job I'm applying for seem really interesting to me, but not only does the job seem interesting, but also I went here. I know what it's like at Marshall, and I really felt at home here. I like my experience, and I wanted to kind of give back to other students. So, and I don't know. I apparently it worked on some level, because here I sit, right? So you also want to be prepared to talk about the value you bring to whatever that specific role is. All right. And now these are different because, or really I should say not different, because these are things that if you have an in-person interview, you want to be sure to do. And this is where a virtual interview can get a little bit interesting, because even though you've got the additional considerations of technology and the background and stuff like that, these are the things that do not change. And even though you've got more to think about as far as the other stuff we've mentioned so far, you cannot forget about these classic hallmarks of a successful interview that have been significant really forever when it comes to interviewing. So let's see here. I think Ashley mentioned a good thing might be to talk about this point too, is like an interview question. And sometimes when we talk about preparing thoroughly, sometimes we have to think about interview questions that can throw us off a little bit. Some questions are actually designed to do that. We call them stress questions. And I'll give you an excellent example of that. What is your biggest weakness? Right? If you're doing an interview and someone asks you about biggest weakness, that's designed to make you squirm a little bit. It's designed to do a number of things. They want to see your honesty. They want to see your self-awareness. But also, can you handle yourself under pressure? And if you can answer a question like that, what is your biggest weakness? That can show that you're someone who can think on the spot and respond under pressure and do things like that. So you want to prepare for questions like that, other stress questions, any questions of any type, like you would in any other type of interview. So, Ashley, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you for tip number 4.
So tip number 4 is dress appropriately. This is probably not one that a lot of students think about before going on a Zoom interview. So as we're thinking about how we should dress appropriately, think about how you would dress in an in-person interview. The same applies for a virtual interview. So dress for success and look the part. It would be unprofessional to come dressed in anything other than business casual clothing. When you put your best foot forward by dressing professionally, it will show the interview that you are serious about your position. So this can sometimes be a little misleading with the virtual interviews, because when I'm going on a meeting, and I did this a few times over the summer, I'm thinking, okay, the camera is only going to show from my waist up. So I have to put a professional shirt on. I can wear pajama pants or anything along those lines and no one will know. Well, this is not going to be the case for an interview. I've had several occasions where we're either conducting an interview or I've participated in one and the interviewer asked someone to stand up. So how embarrassing would it be if you stood up and had PJ pants on? So if I have any tip for you today, it is to make sure that you were dressed the part from head to toe before going on a virtual interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you a question, Ashley. This is, again, I'm going slightly off script. Why do you think someone would dress appropriately from the waist up and wear pajama pants? Do you think they're really saving that much effort, or do you think it's just to feel like they got away with something? What do you think?
I feel like it's just a comfort thing for me. Interviews are very hectic, and it's not something that I personally used to look forward to. I mean, after I had more practice, I was okay with it. But for me, if I could wear pajama pants, maybe that just made me a little bit more comfortable, and it took some of the stress off a little bit. It almost was like a laughing moment for me. So that's one reason why I did. But I just think it's because interviews are uncomfortable.
Okay, and see, from a guy's perspective, I hate ties, and actually I need to probably step it back up. A lot of the summer I was in here by myself, so I started wearing t-shirts. So that's why I'm discussing a tie or in a t-shirt. Elephant in the room. But I know for me as a guy, the most uncomfortable thing I ever wear is a tie, and that's front and center quite literally. So that's why I'm like, I guess pajama pants versus like suit pants would be a little more comfortable. But the most uncomfortable piece of clothing I ever wear is front and center, and I'm already wearing it. So that's why I was like, does it really help that much more, or is it just because I don't know? Sometimes I don't know. It just I don't know a good way to say this is. I see it in students that they just, even if it's something trivial, they just want to like, they want to feel like they won. They want to feel like they got away with something. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I guess there's something you feel like you got one up on the system or something. I don't know. So I don't know if that plays into it or not. Maybe a little bit.
Possibly. I saw over the summer there were several different, so if anyone has a chance to look these up, by all means, you'll have a good laugh. There were different weather hosts that were conducting the weather or the weather reports at their house. And there were times that they had to run into a different room real quick and they were all wearing shorts. Like just about all of them, they were either wearing PJ pants or shorts. So I don't think maybe it's not just for students. I think this is just common for people in general.
Yeah, because like I said, from a guy's standpoint, I'm like, even if I'm doing a job interview virtually, if I go that far to put on the jacket and the tie and all that, I'm thinking now you might catch me with slippers on, so hopefully the camera doesn't go all the way to the floor. Like, how much worse is it really just to put the pants on? But I don't know. Maybe I'm.
Take those extra few minutes, as Denny suggested, make sure that you do that.
Like I said, yeah, you catch me in a suit and slippers is what you'd catch me in, but. So I'm going to go ahead and share with us tip number 5 because I'm sure you're eagerly awaiting that one. Tip number 5 is be authentically yourself. And this is a tip that, again, I would recommend anyone do, even in a face-to-face interview. Let your personality shine through. In addition to showing your knowledge for the company and role, it's crucial to open up and give insight into who you are as a person. Interviewers are looking at you to help them gauge, to see if you are the right person for the role and an excellent culture addition for the organization. And I know a number of hiring committees I've been on here. I did hiring previously in my other job, and that's something we always think about is this person going to culturally be a fit in the workplace? One time, I actually used to hire adjunct faculty at my old job. One time it was for a nursing, we didn't have nurses, it was nurses who applied. It was a basic, like a medical terminology 1 class. And I had 2 people apply for it, or the top 2 candidates. Candidate number 2 was actually slightly more qualified. The candidate number 2, even in the interview, I found to be a bit abrasive, someone I didn't even enjoy talking with. And I just imagined that the student complaints would just go through the roof if I hired that person. I did not see that person as a compromiser. I did not see that person as someone who would get along well with people. So I actually hired person number 1, who was still very good on paper, especially slightly less educated, slightly less qualified, but was a much easier person to get along with. And I hired that person for the role. And by and large, that person did very well in the role. So that's something that employers are thinking about. That's something you do hiring for any length of time. You look at resumes for any length of time, sit on 1 or 2 search committees, you'll find this to be true. Anybody, or just about anybody, can look good on paper, but when you see the real thing before you, you get to see things from another angle. And that's one of the things they think about is this person, even if they check off the experience, the education, check off those boxes, socially, are they going to be a fit? So do you have anything to add on that, Ashley, or any insights? Or
Oh yeah, I'd absolutely agree. Sometimes and I even take into consideration, sometimes we'll have 2 candidates that on paper, they're the same. Well, all their qualifications are similar, their education's very similar, and meeting them in person in that interview is oftentimes a tiebreaker.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when you say tiebreaker, that's actually, I think, a very good way to state it. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. Because there is, no matter what, no matter how much you try to quantify anything, there's always a human element in this. And not just from a staff standpoint, but thinking about, especially in education, you're thinking about this person, okay, this person has to work with students. And like I said, I just don't want 18 student complaints about this teacher a week. So I was like, even if she's a little bit better on paper, I'm going with the other one just because and I'm thinking too, if she starts running students off, so that was just kind of my background when I made that hiring decision. And what you'll find is that as far as fit and things like that, other companies, other businesses might be asking themselves not those same questions, especially if they're not a school, but they'll be asking themselves comparable questions.
Yeah.
So All right, Ashley, you ready to give us tip number 6? Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you totally sure?
I'm
100%
positive.
sure?
Yeah, I'm
Shuffle
wrapping
penny,
them
change
up.
the
Final tip.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to mess with you a little bit.
Okay, so our final tip is one that most students do not think about, and it is follow up. So show your interest immediately after your interview. Reach out to the interviewer by email to show how much you want the role and thank them for their time. Now, this is often considered the thank you letter, but we're not necessarily mailing them a letter. So anytime you do a virtual interview, the best tip that I give you would be to send your thank you letter by email. A lot of employers right now are working from home. They're working remotely. So if you were to send them a letter by mail, they might not receive that. So you can still send a professional thank you letter by email. If you're not really sure what to put in that thank you letter, feel free to contact anyone from the Office of Career Education, and we can help you give you examples and read over your thank you letter before you send it in. This is again another tiebreaker for me. If I have two great candidates, both of their resumes were fantastic. After interviewing them, I'm still kind of unsure which one to select. If one individual sends me a thank you letter and the other doesn't, that again could be a tiebreaker for me.
Definitely, and I mean, I've been on several hiring committees here since I've worked at Marshall, and that's something that usually, if the letter goes to the committee chair, then it's kind of customary that they'll send it out to everyone. But that's something we discuss: is how many people have sent thank yous. This person is the only one who sent a thank you, and that's something we do think about things like that. Not only do we think about it, but it's actually discussed among search committees. So
a common question I get when speaking to students with thank you letters is, when should I send it? Ideally within 24 hours after interviewing, you want to go ahead and send that thank you letter. So the sooner the better.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something when we talk about like email versus like a handwritten card or a note or something like that. Something I've told students too, and if you disagree, let me know. But I think that we have so many emails, we have so many digital things these days. Something handwritten can really set you apart. That being said, sometimes hiring decisions are made really quickly, and you don't want someone else to be given the job before your handwritten note arrives either, while it's still caught up in the mail. So that's why that question, when do you expect a decision? What's the next step? When do you expect a decision? Kind of a bonus question here. That's a good thing to be asking during an interview. And if a decision is not expected for 1 to 2 weeks, especially under normal circumstances, now, I mean, like you said, you made a good point. So many people are working remotely, but if the decision's a little ways off, maybe that handwritten card might not be such a terrible idea. But if, especially 3-4 days or less, if they're going to be making a decision, sometimes I've seen stuff take 3-4 days to get from one end of Huntington to the other. So, and don't ask me why. I don't think that should happen, but it does. So you don't want to lose the job while your note is still in transit.
Another great thing about thank you letters that I want to point out is it could smooth things over. So every interview, well, at least this has been my case, every interview that I went to has not been the best. I've left an interview before and I'm like, wow, that did not go how I expected it to go. They asked me some tough questions that I was not prepared for. I still sent that thank you letter in. You can even, kind of mention in there that maybe that wasn't your best interview and you would like a second chance. So thank you letters can kind of smooth things over if that interview didn't go perfectly.
Oh, that's, it's funny because I never quite thought about it like that. That's a really good point. I like that. So just because I've always been very pro thank you letters. That's just one more really good reason to do it. So awesome, love it. Let's see here. Do you have anything else on tip number 6, or do you want me to go ahead and discuss our services a little bit, or?
I think that's it.
Okay. So, all righty. So I'm going to go ahead and discuss this a little bit. Now, virtual interviews, like I said, there's something we talked to you about today, and there's something we can definitely help give you coaching on as far as how you present yourself virtually and things like that. Some of our other services include, well, I'll go ahead and talk about things that go with interviews here. First off, we can help you just professionally, like your skills on that. How do you present yourself? How do you answer questions? We have a thing called Big Interview that we use here. Some of our classes use it, but some of our students who need mock interviews, I believe, have used that. as well. We do like in-person mock interviews under typical circumstances. We do in-person mock interviews for both 4 classes, but also on a fairly regular basis. I mean, during a typical semester, I probably have at least every other week. I have one of those in my office. In some cases, many more than that. But like I said, again, that's typical circumstances when people were coming into the office, and we know this is anything but typical 2020. We can also help you with thank you letters because, well, of course, one of the other services we help students with a lot is resumes. We help students with resumes, cover letters, and any type of document employment related that we can. And of course, that includes thank you letters. So if you need help crafting a thank you letter, if you know that it's something you should be doing, but okay, how do I go about that? We can help you with that as well. So. And as far as our other services, we can, like I said, most things that pertain to careers in some way, shape, or form are things that we can help you with. Like I said, today we're focusing more talking about the interviews and, of course, mock interviews in person when we can, virtually these days, or really anytime. There's thank you letters. We can help you with that. Like I said, we do document reviews, any type of professional document. We talk to students about majors and careers. Ashley runs a really great job shadowing program. It's just taken off. It's grown in leaps and bounds since Ashley's been here. She just is rocking and rolling with it, does a great job. So most things, most questions, most matters that somehow relate to careers, this office can help you with. So Ashley, where are we located? I'm going to let you discuss that.
Okay, so if you would like more information on any of the services that we've previously mentioned or virtual interviews, we are located at 1681 Fifth Avenue. Our contact number is 304-696-2370. I know a lot of students prefer emailing versus phone calls. The idea of phone calls intimidate students sometimes. So if you just want an appointment, you want to just email us, you can contact us at career@marshall.edu. And our hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m. And currently we are accepting virtual appointments.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. We got a nice little picture of our office here. We call it the house for obvious reasons. We are located near Harless Dining Hall, right off Fifth Avenue. Like I said, right now we're really encouraging virtual appointments, but yeah, just reach out to us anytime. We would anything career related. That's why we're here. We love to see students succeed. We want to help you. We're a great resource. I tease students sometimes. I go into presentations and I said, well, fees have already paid for us, so you may as well come and talk to us. Save me from playing solitaire on my computer. Come and talk to me. Give me something to do. I want to help you succeed. So, do you have any other thoughts, Ashley, before we move on to the Q&A portion?
I don't think so, but I think a few questions will pop in my head when we start discussing that. So.
Okay, and something Ashley pointed out, I think Hillary had mentioned the chat. I guess the chat's working with me and Ashley. I don't know if it's working for everyone. So for Q&A, what I'm going to ask that you do if you have a question is just unmute and ask the question. We'll just try to take those one by one as they come in. But if you have questions, really, especially questions focused on our topic today, virtual interviews. But really, if it's anything career related, career education related, don't be shy. We'll do our best. See if you can stump Ashley and I. Right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the questions portion of our program. So just be sure you're unmuted, and if you have any questions, please just ask away.
Hey guys, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I know that you all spoke about the thank you note, kind of directly after, whether it's through email right afterward or a written thank you note that's physically delivered right afterward. But whenever you have applied for a job and you haven't heard back yet, how long do you think is an appropriate time before reaching out and saying, hey, I applied on this date, I was really looking forward to the opportunity, and kind of trying to figure out if they've already filled it or if they got your application? Do you think there's a good suggested timeline to reach out?
I'll go ahead and share what I tell people, and then Ashley, do you want to weigh in on it also?
Yes.
Okay, usually what I tell people, and unless you've got either been directed or for some other reason, unless you've got a really strong feeling to not do this, I usually recommend after an interview following up once a week for about a month. And I think a good, if you interview, like if someone interviews with me today, there may or may not be a decision made by tomorrow. So if someone other than just the thank you, because I think the thank you is very appropriate. But if someone followed up very quickly, I think you want to be careful not to come off as pushy or aggressive. That is a concern you want to think about a little bit. I think giving the person a week to follow up saying, hey, just have any decisions, and like I said, I'm speaking in addition to that thank you. Hey, I'm still very interested. Can I answer any further questions? Have any decisions been made? I think waiting a week for that is fine, and there may or may not be anything at that time. And I think even if you repeat that maybe two up to 3 more times is okay. If it's been 4 weeks or so, I usually tell students, I think one of a few things has happened. Either they're eyeing other candidates, they don't want to tell you that. Maybe in some cases, I've heard of a company running a search, interviewing all kinds of people, and then they don't have funding for the position. So the position's been pulled, which is frustrating and disheartening to all parties involved. Or if it's been 3-4 weeks or beyond and they've not made a decision, and this might not be fair, but at least I think points to the possibility that might be a very disorganized organization. And it could raise red flags. Is that a place you'd see yourself or not? So Ashley, go ahead and share your thoughts as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I use the 1 week rule as well, except I always tell students that as you're looking over the job application, sometimes in fine print at the bottom, it'll say, do not contact employer. This is pretty common in larger facilities. So I'm going to select a hospital just for an example. So let's say Cabell, and I don't know if this is their rule or not. Let's say Cabell Hospital is applying for, they have several different applications open at once. They could receive 100 applicants, if not more, for each one of those positions. And there's no way for someone in their human resources department to actually contact back for follow-ups for all of those incoming applications. So something that they could say is, don't contact us, we'll contact you. So make sure you're looking at the bottom of the application. Along with that, after you apply for a position, especially if it's online, it's pretty common to get an email back within no more than 24 hours thanking you for your application. Be sure to read the bottom of that. Sometimes it'll say, again, in fine print, do not contact employer. Sometimes it'll say, if you have any question, contact this person directly. So you want to make sure that you're contacting the correct person for the position, and to make sure that you're allowed to follow up with that position. Most jobs have, most companies have no problem at all with following up, and they encourage that. They like to see that you're you're still interested in the position and you're following up. So 1 week rule. Another thing I want to point out is the date that the position is open. So sometimes as you're scrolling through an application, at the bottom it could say this position is open till filled. If that's the case, go ahead and send that follow-up question within a week. If it says that it's going to be open for like 3 months, it could be very possible that employer is not allowed to look at all the applications until the end of that date. So those are just a couple of things to be considered. So if you send that follow-up email within a week and you don't hear back directly, don't get discouraged. It could just be that the position is still opening and they're just waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing I think that Ashley pointed out is really good. I've applied, I think even Marshall does this when you apply for a job here. Sometimes they say don't contact us, but they don't say it in so many words. Sometimes they word it really nicely, like you will be contacted if you are desired to enter for an interview or something like that. They say it kind of indirectly they say it without saying it, maybe, or at least that's the way I read it. Now, I'll tell you, when it came to following up here, I did at this job, but I didn't follow up with Marshall HR. Once I interviewed with Denise, our department head here, I followed up with her directly. And again, yeah, I think knowing what the policy is on that, it might vary from company to company. So being aware of that policy is probably a really good idea. But I know I got much, not to say anything bad about HR here, but just like Ashley said, they deal with so many applications and they're so busy on a day-to-day basis. Denise in this office was able to give me the most up-to-date hiring information.
Absolutely.
So,
And if
excellent
a
question.
student's in doubt, they can absolutely send us an email saying, hey, I applied for this position. This is the email I got back. This was the job application. You care to look over it and make sure it's okay to go ahead and send this in right away. And sometimes just a second pair of eyes is a great idea.
Definitely.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Allow or Rowan, do you have any questions?
Hi. I have some questions.
Okay.
Do you guys have good relations with companies that might give like instant interviews? Because I know it's probably not going to help, but just like maybe a head start on how to see if I can apply and whether or not I get a job or if I can learn from it and try something else.
Do you want to talk about that, Ashley? Because I've got kind of a generic answer. You on employers, you may have more specific. So do you want to talk about that, or?
Well, when you say instant interviews, do you mean like open interviews?
Yeah, like I would say a test run, like to see like which company you would set me up with to see if whether or not I would do well in it or what position I would try to apply. Like basically a head start before I can do it on my own, because sometimes these factors don't on your own don't at first don't help.
So we have a couple different, that's a great question, first off. We have a couple different events on campus that would actually, I feel like would be beneficial for you. So first all is our Career Expo. Sometimes just meeting the employers face to face, and they can kind of discuss what positions they have open in their different departments. They can kind of give a briefing of what to expect at each different department. That's helpful. Another thing that we do and that we're going to be doing more this semester is employer panels. So throughout the semester, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Handshake. You may have received a few emails regarding Handshake. If not, feel free to contact us and we can walk you through the process. But on Handshake, there's going to be employer panel events where an employer would set up something similar to this, would talk about their department, and then they would be able to ask questions. So if you had questions for a specific person in a department, they would be there to answer, and they can kind of walk you through what a day at work could look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to add real quick, yeah, we used to have a program called Job Tracks, and that's been replaced by Handshake, and we have new opportunities, internships, part-time, full-time jobs added there all the time. And I think there's a number of things that can help students as far as figuring out, what's that company culture, what's that employee-employer relationship going to look like. Something I have encouraged students to do is, even if they're not quite ready to look for jobs yet, I encourage students to go read job postings, because I'm like, you can get a feel for what people are looking for, you can get a feel for that company culture, and even that little bit of research. I think I've had students tell me they're astounded at what they found doing that little bit of research. So even little things like that might help more than you think. But excellent question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can help you with Handshake too, bud.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, any step of the way, you gotta get a hold of us. That's why we're here. We love to help students out. So please don't be shy. Come talk to us anytime.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Oh, excellent. Are there any other questions here? I think we've had a really great discussion going. I want to keep it going if we have any further questions. Does anyone want to know anything, or want to get our opinions on anything, or just any outstanding matters?
I think I'm good.
Nothing at the moment, but if something comes up, I think I got the email.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep. You say that, yeah, just to recap the email, it's just career@marshall.edu. So nice, short, sweet, to the point. Yeah, anytime you have any questions at all, definitely shoot an email and we'll get right back with you for sure. So if we don't have any further questions, we can probably go ahead and call it a day. But this has been Career Education Live. This is a new monthly outreach that our department is doing. earlier this year, we were thinking about some new stuff anyway, and then with COVID and being virtual, it seemed like there's no better time to do this. So we just like this because we can we'll choose a topic, announce it ahead of time, and we just want to be as accessible to students as possible. And I think today talking about virtual interviews, I think this has probably been very timely. I know they're, at least for the time being, probably not going anywhere. So we'll do another one of these next month, and I'll be honest. I'm coordinating these. I don't even necessarily have every topic hammered down because I kind of want to get the feel for students when they get back, because I want to make sure we're discussing things that are the most beneficial to students as possible. But about a week or so out from each one, we'll announce the topic. So definitely be paying attention to social media for those, and we hope to see you again in the future. And I just want to say thank you again for joining us today. And anytime you have questions, please reach out.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. You have an awesome afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.